And so in other words, hey Jim, I noticed that you're one of the fortunate few that can add $1,000 towards your savings account. The problem is though is that your bank's only paying you about 25%, and because of inflation, your money is losing value tremendously each and every single year. The cost of living is increasing. I got an idea. I wanted your feedback first. So if you can already afford this much, if I can help you shave off 7 years, and then you take 7 years times 12 is what? Quick math. 84. There you go. Good shit. So 84 times their monthly mortgage payment, principal and interest. Let's say it's $1,000. I could save you $84,000, Jim, and only increase your monthly payment by $150. You're already adding $1,000 to your bank. You're not even really going to feel it. Your credit union is only paying you 25 basis points. Your property value is increasing at a rate of 3 to 5% per year. What if I could show you how to retire at the age of 60 versus 67? What's your thoughts on that? Ready?
Yeah.
What's up, everybody?
Morning.
How you doing?
Good afternoon.
David, Wayne, Danny, Al, and Colin, user number 3. Appreciate your attendance today. This is going to be the second episode of something that we plan to do again every first Wednesday and every third Wednesday of every week. And we're going to cover different topics that I think are going to be helpful for us to grow as professionals, right? And so, I put together the topic and I was back there thinking, because I always seem to forget what the topic is before I actually come up and talk. I like to kind of freestyle the conversation. But what we're going to cover today is our best practices to help you alleviate the pain of not being able to capture the loyalty as well as the overall commitment from the borrower or the prospect or the lead. Now, this is something that's not necessarily going to apply towards Rate Table, because as I had mentioned last time in our meeting, I think Rate Table is something that sells itself, right? And I at the end of the day, Rate Table is something to get the phone to ring, but what do you do with every other lead? And not only that, but I think Rate Table, it makes it a very easy sale. And what I hope to teach you guys are the fundamentals of selling so that you could survive off of any lead type at any given point in any market. So whether you're doing outbound sales or you're doing inbound sales. And so I'm going to really rely on your feedback. And so, at the end of this meeting, I'm going to have an open forum for some questions. And I really, really do suggest that you put the questions out there, because this is going to be an opportunity for everyone to learn. Because if you're not asking questions, then you're not really kind of, retaining as much information, or you might leave here with questions that you never really got a chance to answer. And so while I share some time with you, my only primary goal is that you go back to your cubicle, or you go back to your team, and you actually implement the things that we talk about here today. Because that's the only way you're going to be able to get return for the time that you guys invested in putting towards training, right? So a second on that, number one is the fact that you are here in training. I got people like Ray, Luke, Jay on my team. And mind you, these people are part of the number one team, not to brag or anything, but we are killing it. And they are here, right? And so that's something that we can really take from the book of always practicing your craft. And the reason why I always talk about that is because you have an option, right? Where I got like this one quote, and by the way, the quotes that you see on my page on Instagram, I don't come up with that. I got a team that actually does that. But one thing that really stood out is there's this saying, this quote that says, change is inevitable, but growth is an option. And that was powerful, because growth is really an option. And we're either going to react to change, or we're just going to kind of adapt with it and move on so we can grow as a person. The upside is that if you can learn, the true fundamentals of sales, I think it can really apply to everything else. One of the reasons why, and I'll be very transparent with you, is one of the reasons why I even do these meetings, not only to help you guys, but also to perfect my craft so that I can help others, because I have a side business, right? I have my own, of course, intent, my own brand. And that's something to kind of set myself up so I have a foundation that relies on something more than just loan origination. Because I have a family to support, I got mouths to feed, and I definitely have a future that I need to account for, and a hefty ass mortgage bill. Anyone else got a mortgage bill? Yeah, there you go. So whether you got a mortgage or you got rent to cover, I think that at the end of the day, what we really want to do is be able to figure out kind of the keys to opening up the gates to create more income. And I'm just going to show you a couple of the best practices to help kind of improve that, okay? So going to the primary topic, with regards to the first problem that I think we face, and it's a matter of getting people to not only react to us, not only to buy from us, but to actually influence urgency. And I want you to think of the times that you ever actually reacted with urgency towards buying something. And this could be anything from buying anything on Amazon. Like I react with urgency all the time. I'll hit up Amazon for every single thing that I need. Like, oh, we need that? Let me check Amazon real quick. I need it right now. And the reason why we do this and why we have to appreciate it is because empathy is step number one into understanding how our buyers think. And who are our buyers? Our buyers are people just like us. The only difference is that they own a home and they have no idea of what, the mortgage lingo that we talk about and how it works. But at the end of the day, if you really break it down to its bare bones, what we sell is money. And you might think like, man, but D, if I sell money, it should be much easier than that. It should be easier, but the problem is that we have 101,000 other people that are also licensed to sell money. So there are tons of different lenders and tons of different loan officers that do exactly what we do, but how do we differentiate ourselves and kind of step above the rest and actually control that whole buying decision? And so last meeting that we talked about was all about rapport and why it's important to actually increase your talk time. And the reason why that's important is because rapport is the primary actual ingredient of making a sale. And the reason for that is because without rapport, you wouldn't be able to custom tailor fit your remedy or your solution towards that particular buyer, right? Does that make sense? So it's the difference of saying, hey, you know what, we can lower your payment and lower your rate. Why not choose New American Funding versus, well, hey, Jim, I can lower your rate so you can pay off that $30,000 in credit card debt, remove that $350 in payment that you said that you're making a minimum payment on and is stopping your ability to offset the loss of income that your wife has because of maternity leave. You see the difference in the two? So the only way you're able to actually get that type of rapport understanding is if you're asking the right questions and creating that type of relationship. But in order to actually influence urgency, you need to practice, it's a very popular acronym, it's FOMO, fear of missing out. And you might be asking, well, D, how do I apply fear of missing out on a mortgage product? And the way you do it is, and I'm gonna share with you a very helpful technique that I used to use, because when I was a loan officer, I was on Ray's team. And Ray, of course, being the VP now, he was my sales manager. And Ray was very strict on pricing. So he wasn't very lenient at all with regards to pricing exceptions. And that's fine, that's okay, because at the end of the day, I was one of the loan officers that understood that these people don't buy price, they buy solutions. They buy remedies, right? And they buy a quick fix. For anyone who's a homeowner, has anyone ever had like an air conditioning go out, like in the middle of summer, right? Okay, so when that happens, you don't care about price, right? You just care about the quick fix, the quick remedy. You're not necessarily searching on Yelp to see who has the better deal because you just want the problem fixed. And so I think the same thing applies, but on a much grander scale to our prospects, because it has to do with their financial capability. And their financial capability is talking about, how much money comes in versus how much money goes out. And every single month they have these specific priorities or these responsibilities that they need to account for. And it's a matter of us taking the time to speak with them to extract the right information to identify which one of those things are hurting the most. Get it? It's very hard to understand which are hurting the most if we go straight into pricing and we go straight into offering and selling. And that's one of the main reasons why I talked about Midas, M-I-D-A-S, and it has to be in that particular order, right? Marketing is what happens first, interest and intent is what happens second, desire is what happens next, action is all brought through desire, because through the desire you can captivate the leverage. And when I talk about leverage, I'm not talking about these people want a lower rate or monthly savings. When I'm talking about leverage is what will happen if they don't capture the monthly savings or the lower rate in payment. Get it? So one of the most strongest influences that we have in life is fear. One of the reasons why we sacrifice our weekends or work 12 hours is ultimately because of fear. It's fear we're gonna miss out on the market, fear we're not gonna make our rent or our mortgage. It's fear that we're not gonna be number one on the sales floor. There's a lot of things that actually motivate us, but one of the things that really motivates most is fear. And this doesn't just apply to you, this applies to everyone. This is the science of how people think. And when you get a chance to really understand how people think and how they react, it becomes a game. It becomes really fun and very easy to make someone react with urgency. And so going back to, well, D, how do I practice FOMO? And how I would practice FOMO when Ray was my manager is that Ray, this is pretty much the overall process, right? So you get a chance to talk to your borrower, and very rarely, besides I think Ray Villapando, sells rate sheet, right? Ray's like probably one of the only LOs that I know that sells rate sheet. Much respect to you, Ray. Everyone I think is we're natural because we want to know what's the discount that we can get, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm very empathetic to salesmen because I'm a salesman at heart. So I understand that, the easier that I can make it for myself, the easier that I can make it to secure and glue that prospect to me, and he's not gonna go shop me. It's just gonna be easy. I don't have to babysit this person, I don't need to convince this person. So I get it. But the truth is that the process starts from you have a conversation with your prospect, and then you price out your deal and you see what you can get for this person, right? So let's say your SM gives you, let's say 50 basis points pricing exception. And I'm only gonna use these figures because this is something that we can really relate to. So if we can get, let's say 4.5%, no closer, and again, this is not necessarily applicable today, but I'm just giving you an example, right? So if I can get 4.5%, no closer means that no closing costs at all. And I can get 4.25% with no lender fee, 1629 lender credit, or I can get 4% flat. Did I say that, 4%? Yeah, 4% flat with them paying the closing cost. So let's just say that I got that as an approval, where I think 99% of mortgage loan officers are gonna go straight for the maximum presentation to make it easier for us to get that sale, where the actual closers are going to really prosper in how they approach it is that they never show their cards at full because they're actually painting the picture for the prospects. And so, for example, if I knew that I can get a no closer at 4.5, I understand that I know that. My prospects don't know that. Get it? But not only that, but by the way I present it, I never say, hey, Jim, I can get you a 30-year fix at 4.5%, no closing cost. Instead, I present it to Jim in a way where I say, hey, Jim, I can bring your total payment from here down to here. And when I say total payment, what I'm talking about are three things. And I really want you guys to really capture this because this is gonna help you change the perception of how your prospects look at it. So before I go over a pitch, what I do is I find out how much money they're gonna capture through a payment deferral and then also an escrow balance refund, okay? So payment deferral, let's just say it was $2,000, and an escrow balance refund, let's just say it was another $2,000. And before I go over the pitch, I find out how much or what they can do with that $4,000. In other words, I spend it for them. Because if they said no, they're not gonna get that money anyway. Get it? So let's say if they had a Chase card for $4,000. Before in the conversation, before I even go over the pitch, I'm gonna ask them, hey, this Chase card, Jim, how much do you send? Because the credit report's gonna read like 35 bucks, right? But little did I know that Jim probably sends 100 because he's trying to pay it off. Oh, we send $100 because we're trying to pay it off. Got it. Right? So when you ask Jim and say, okay, is that $100 the minimum due or you pay above and beyond? Oh, we usually just round it up. Sounds familiar, right? So nonetheless, he more than likely, he probably says $200. And just as a quick side note, the way Jim answers that question is going to help you really kind of examine who handles the finances. And I can't stress enough how important it is to figure out who handles the finances, because whoever handles the finances is the one who really feels the pain. And that's the person who you need to practice the FOMO effect on, is the person who actually feels the pain with that number. So if Jim said, I think we, then I know I'm not going to show my cards or pitch until that second part of the we is present. Get it? Very powerful stuff. You can't cut yourself short by just trying to get it over with because you have 95 other things to do. Because at the time that you pitch your product or you pitch your price, that's your go time. That's your first impression. And first impressions are priority. It's the number one thing that these people are going to make their decision to buy from you on, right? So it's very important to pick that up. But when I go over the information with Jim, I'm not going to say, hey, Jim, it looks like I can get you 4.5% with no closing costs. I never say that. Instead, I have Jim buy into the monthly payment first, right? So when I have him buy into the monthly payment, what I do is I take his mortgage payment plus the debt total payment of what he could potentially pay off by removing that debt load of how much is going to be paid off from the $4,000 that he gets from the payment deferral and escrow balance refund. You guys follow me so far? Okay. So why this is going to be helpful is because you ultimately turned your $125 savings into $250 savings. You get it? This becomes leverage. And this becomes something that is tangible, that they could feel, and emotionally they can almost experience. And it's very, very important that you do that. Because when you get them to a point of climax, you have this period of time where you have their full attention. And all they're trying to do is decipher whether or not they're going to hire you to become their loan officer. So the only thing that you really want to do is spit information that's actually going to make them want you more, right? So when I get to that point and I say, hey, you know what, your total payment, your mortgage, you can go from $1,500 down to $1,250. So this is what I can do with your monthly payment. But hey, I wanted to get your feedback first because I have an idea. Right now, that $1,250 has closing costs of about $3,600. Mind you, I already know with that $1,250, I can cover the closing costs. You get it? I'm just not letting him know, right? But with that $1,250, you know what? We're doing a huge campaign within the Orange County area, and I think that if I can get your full document package, I can include it in a bundle within a presentation that I have towards my manager to see if I can get you an exception to cover all the closing costs. I wanted to get your feedback first though, because I'm gonna need a few documents like pay stubs, W-2s, mortgage statement, and a deck page. If you can get that to me by tonight, I can include you within that bundle package and present it to my manager to see if he's willing to waive all your closing costs. You see how different that sounds? Now it's the fear of missing out. That is actually what influences people to buy from you right then and there. That is what influences urgency. But what happens though is because sometimes we don't really think about it, it's more or less a process. We think like, hey, Jim, I can get you 4.5 with no closing costs. I can get you 4.25 with no lender fee, and I can get you 4% with you paying the closing costs. And then what do? We ask if they're interested. But it's all about positioning, because if you don't position yourself right, you don't have the leverage. And again, the Midas principle is that you got to get their true desire. The true desire was to create monthly savings. And in order to influence action, I need to capture leverage in order to make this dude move. Make sense? So it's all about actually calculating your steps before you even present it to the person. Otherwise, if you're showing your cards and you're not putting enough oomph behind it and you don't have enough rapport, how the hell are you going to make this person do what you want them to do? There's not enough meat and bones to it. You get it? So I think that, number one, is a key part of actually how to create urgency. And you're going to be able to do it, and you got to use your own creativity to kind of translate it in a way that applies to that specific person. Make sense? So let's just say Jim didn't have any debt. Let's say Jim was one of the rare few that has no debt, 800 FICO, right? He has, he just refinanced into a 30-year 3 years ago, because you're going to come across these people and they do exist. Well, what you can find out is how much cash flow that they have. So in other words, like how much are you putting towards monthly savings? Because what happens is when these people put it towards monthly savings, just like us, they get the same returns like us. And right now, whoever has a savings account, do you know how much your bank pays you on that savings account? Damn near 15, 20 basis points, right? If you're lucky, 25 basis points. But do you guys know how much return we get on real estate? 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5% per year. You get it? So by understanding that, then you have this ability to kind of change your perception. And so in other words, hey Jim, I noticed that you're one of the fortunate few that can add $1,000 towards your savings account. The problem is though is that your bank's only paying you about 25%, and because of inflation, your money is losing value tremendously each and every single year. The cost of living is increasing. I got an idea. I wanted your feedback first. So if you can already afford this much, if I can help you shave off 7 years, and then you take 7 years times 12 is what? Quick math. 84. There you go. Good shit. So 84 times their monthly mortgage payment, principal and interest, let's say is $1,000. I could save you $84,000, Jim, and only increase your monthly payment by $150. You're already adding $1,000 to your bank. You're not even really going to feel it. Your credit union is only paying you 25 basis points. Your property value is increasing at a rate of 3 to 5% per year. What if I could show you how to retire at the age of 60 versus 67? What's your thoughts on that? Get it? Here's the thing, Jim, is that, we're doing a huge campaign within your area of Washington, and I have an idea. I want to run it by you, get your feedback first. If I could show your file is fully incomplete, meaning I got all your documentation to fully show that you truly qualify for this deal, I can ask my manager if we can waive all the closing costs. Mind you, I already know we can waive our closing costs. Get it? But here's the thing. I got a meeting with him tomorrow at 3 p.m. Can you get me your documents tonight? Completely different delivery, right? Even though you already know that you can get them the 40 bips or the 50 bips off. So keep in mind on that because it's all about perception, and because these prospects or these clients have no idea how our process works, they have no idea about the conversation you have with your SM, they have no idea about how pricing works. All they sense is no closing costs. And what do they tell you that they want when they first talk to you? No closing costs. Get it? So we already know that that's what they want. And the only reason why I'm not saying like, hey, I could do this right off the bat is because I tell them specifically, hey, Jim, I want your feedback first. I think I could do this. What do you think? Now you're putting the ball in their court. And what do you think they're going to say? Hell yeah. How do I do that? Get it? That's how you influence urgency, and that's how you make them act fast. You guys have any questions on that? It's pretty straightforward, right? Yep.
I was just gonna say, so like your scenario with the different percentages, obviously some of those would be below par where they're getting like lender credit back, and you're estimating like dropping some basis points or something like that. Mm-hmm. Okay, gotcha. That's what I thought. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, you always know where. I think just to answer your question, you always know where you stand. You always know where your limitations are, right? But the key thing is though, like how I would sell when I was a loan officer is I would sell rate sheet as if I had no option for PE. Because I felt, for whatever reason, that if I can convince myself that that PE really is a hookup, is an exception, I'm gonna make them earn it, right? Otherwise, why am I giving them an exception? Get it? So I really convinced myself that that rate sheet was rate sheet, and I would read rate sheet. I'd be like, hey, you know what, based on our current pricing today, looks like 4.5, it gets you about 0.25%, prepaid interest. You actually gotta buy it down. So it's gonna cost you about $2,500. But hey, I got an idea. We have this huge campaign in Orange County where I think I can maybe fit you in and get all the closing costs waived, because we really have a huge presence within your area of Orange County. And I got this meeting anyway at 3 o'clock tomorrow, but here's the thing is I'm gonna need a few documents from you just to show my manager that you actually qualify, and if I can include you within that campaign, this will help you save $3,600. What do you think? Fuck yeah, how do I get that, right? Because all they hear is that they have no closing costs. Get it? So all you're doing is changing the perception that they have. You might be like, but D, that's misleading. No, it's not. The fucking rate sheet says it's 99.75. You're hooking them up, right? All it is a give take bounce back, right? But the problem is though, is that some of us, we kind of expect that because we don't know anything else. We don't know anything different. None of us have actually sold in a retail environment where we didn't have a choice to get that PE, right? We never worked in a space where whatever you see, that's the price you get. Got it? We're not selling cell phones, right? We're not, we have an opportunity to really work up a pricing exception. But the problem lies is that when we take these people down this particular path and we don't give ourselves enough opportunity to build rapport, we don't understand how important that payment is to that particular person. But when we build up the rapport and we take our time to really finesse that conversation, we understand what happens if they don't buy. You see, the primary focus that a lot of loan officers have is what happens if they do buy, right? Hey, if you get it today, Jim, we can save you some money on your monthly payment. We could save you probably $135. Hey, Jim, we can bring your payment down from 4.5 to 4.375, 30-year fixed. We're trying to find reasons why they should buy. But a lot of people don't really, appreciate the fact of FOMO, the fear factor. And the reason why I was actually brought up to sell on fear was because, as some of you already know, I came up in a subprime environment. And so I used to work with a lender that, made a lot of predatory moves, and this lender got shut down because of its predatory lending practices. And I'm not teaching you to practice predatory lending. We couldn't do that even if we wanted to because of all the regulations that were put in place after the meltdown, right? But what I did get a chance to take away was understanding the true saying of people really do buy off of emotion and then justify it through logic. And so people will really buy from you if they have a fear of missing out on that opportunity. You get it? So really practice that. And so again, the only way though that you can even get to that point is if you had an opportunity to build up the proper rapport and understanding of how you're truly going to deliver value and change the overall lifestyle quality of that person you're talking to. And it's very hard to understand how you're going to change their lifestyle quality if you're going average of talk time 5 to 7 minutes. Because all you did was like, hey, Jim, how can I help you today? You know what, D, I want to lower my rate and lower my payment. Got it. What's your rate and payment? 3.5%. Right? Very fast conversation without first understanding, well, what happens if Jim doesn't lower his payment regardless of the rate, regardless of the cost? Get it? Yes.
You asked him that question. You asked him, hey Jim, if you don't do this refinance today, what are the next steps? Do you ask that question in your first presentation?
I do, but in a different way. So like in my sales script, which I only hope that each and every single one of you has had a chance to download a copy of my sales script. Because the sales script is really designed just to give you control of the conversation, right? And I only hope that you guys have taken an opportunity to download it because it's, number one, it's free. Number two, it's God's gift to earth. But it really is an opportunity for you to really control the conversation. So to answer your question is I do, but in a different manner. And so how I would ask is say, okay, sounds good. If we can help you create the savings though, Jim, where would you redirect the savings? Would you put it back towards your savings or retirement, or would you put it towards other debt? Get it? So it's less evasive. Because I think there are certain words that trigger like, oh, this guy's trying to sell me, right? You're trying to corner me. Like, what would you do if you didn't get this monthly savings? Get it? So what happens is the questions that I talk about, and inside the script it says, hey, open up with some open-ended conversations or open-ended questions, right? And the question is like, okay, what the hell is an open-ended question, right? Hey, what do you do on Saturdays? That's kind of an open-ended question, right? But you don't want to go in that direction. What I'm talking about is open-ended question is a question that's going to open end into a bridge question. So in other words, if I asked you and said, hey, where would you redirect the savings? Would you put it towards your retirement or would you put it towards debt? And if he says I would put it towards debt, it becomes a bridge question to talk about debt. Get it? Okay, got it. How much in debt do you owe? Well, I owe about 30 grand. How much are you sending towards the monthly payments now? 300. Is that the minimum, or is that above and beyond? That's the minimum. You see how it's a bridge? On the opposite side, if you said, I actually want to redirect it towards my savings and my retirement, got it. Open-ended question. So this becomes a bridge. When do you plan on retiring? I plan on retiring in 12 years. Got it. How many years do you have left on your loan? 28. I bet you don't want to have a mortgage while you're retired, right? So let's see if we can actually help you pay this off in 10 years, let alone 12 years. That way you don't got to worry about a mortgage while you're retired. You see how that flows? So it gives you one or two different directions in which you can control the conversation and get a little bit more kind of oomph out of that conversation. So that's how, I think in my opinion, that's how you capture the sense of urgency. That's how you kind of paint the picture in a way where they don't want to miss out and they want to act fast. You guys see how that works? You guys have any other questions on that? How that works? Okay, so now the second is how do I keep the prospect tied and glued to me throughout the 45 to 60 day process, right? Because the first thing that we always want to share with our prospects is that this is going to be fast, this is going to be smooth. You know, we should be done by the end of next month. And deep down inside though, our fears are actually reminding us of the experience we had with the Joneses file, that Patel file, right? 68 days in process and you still got that conditional approval and you're like, damn, this is gonna hurt. But you're over here telling this dude's gonna last 45 days and you're like crossing your fingers like, damn, this is probably gonna be like 98. Right? I'm gonna be with you for like a good 8 months, Jim. That's what it feels like, right? But I guess where I'm getting at is, number one is if we can learn from the files that do last 60 plus days, what we will find out is at the end of the day, it was probably things that we could have handled up front, right? Because what really kind of puts us into the back of the line is that we missed certain things about the prospect. Like, oh shit, this dude has alimony and child support. I should have got a divorce decree, right? These are things that we probably should have handled up front, because otherwise, when we identify what the reason for that delay is, your file gets pushed back to the line. And because of the volume, you now not only have 20 files in that entire line, you got now 100 plus in that line. So it's gonna be a while until that file actually gets even viewed, right? So let's look at the checkpoints where files create delays. Number one is the PA queue. The only reason why your file is going to not go straight into underwriting is because the PA is going to identify a few things that you missed right up front. Get it? So then what does the PA do? The PA actually has to email you and say, hey, we're missing this, 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 and this. And then that trickles down into different time wasters like, oh shit, now I got to call my borrower. Now I got to email them. Now I got to chase them down. When I do finally get the documents, I got to let the PA know that, hey, these documents are in. But that time span took about 3 to 5 days. Get it? So what can we learn from that? Well, what we can learn from that is being a little bit more diligent on the front end. And so change the questions that we're asking. Make sure you're covering questions. And the only way that you can really do that is really learn from kind of those files that went through the massive amount of delay. Now, granted, there are some processors that are beyond capacity, and even though you have the cleanest file on earth, it just seems like it's not moving, right? And in instances like that, the only way you could really cover yourself is make sure that you're doing right by the actual loan processor. And I know it seems weird because the last thing we want to do is help this processor. They're not even helping us out, right? But the only way we can do that is actually loop in the team lead and say, hey, team lead, I've had every single thing in this file. There's nothing needed on this file, but for whatever reason, this file is just not moving. There's no notes in the conversation log. There's no movement within the file, you know. And I've asked, what do I need to move this file along, and I've gotten no response. You see what I'm getting at? But the only way that you can even prepare that type of email is if you know your stuff, is if you are holding yourself accountable. But the problem is, though, is that we're working amongst agents that email out of expectation. In other words, no name, no loan number in the subject line. I'm like, hey, Susie, what's the status on this file? What? Right? And this is true. And the only way that we're actually going to keep our face with these processors and make them want us and want to work for us is we have to kind of differentiate ourselves from every other loan officer. And so it's the way we come off, you know. And I had this one message where, you know, everyone is a sale. Like everyone, like if you go to a restaurant, like it's not, you know, I mean, like in order to get the best service, you sell everyone. You sell everyone from the valet to the receptionist to the person that shows you the table to the waiter, right? You're selling everybody. And what I mean by sales, that you're not trying to flip them on a 30-year fix. What I'm talking about sale is you're actually talking to them like you appreciate them and you want that best service. Because that's the only way that you're going to show the best service. And the reason why is because if you can get that type of rapport, you can show them that you appreciate their time and that you're actually, you know, you're not one of the kind of neglectful type of customers that take them for granted, they'll work a little bit harder for you. Well, the same thing applies for operations, right? Processors will, even though they'll never admit it, they'll neglect you if you're rude and you're not thoughtful, you're kind of ignorant. Get it? And if you're coming off in a specific way, you have to understand how you're coming off. Because if you come off more professionally and more helpful, they're actually going to prefer you and work with you. So it's everything from loan numbers in the subject line to the last name to even just the courtesy. Hey, Susie, I hope you're doing well. I can only imagine how busy you are. Thank you so much for everything you do. I appreciate you. And then move into your request. But then how do you move into your request? Is the request like, hey, what's the status on this? Borrower is getting antsy. Can we close or not? 3 question marks. Because that seems kind of rude, right? Right? Instead, an easier way is, hey, Susie, I appreciate you. I know you're absolutely busy. I just want to let you know I got a phone call with this person at 3 o'clock. Is there anything I can help collect for you to get this file moving off your desk? Completely different perception, right? Number one is they understand that you're going to contact them, which is one less task that processor has to do. Get it? Number two is in order to move it off your desk, which is what the processor wants, they don't want it on their desk anymore. Number three is, what can I do for you? Got it. So you saved me a phone call. You saved me moving this file. Let me go and pick your file from the back of the line and move it straight up. Because I want to know exactly what I can have you do as a LO that I don't have to do. Get it? It's a win-win at that point, isn't it? Got it. So, but it all comes off on how you come and approach that processor. The fucking problem is, and I don't mean to curse, but the problem is though, is that we come entitled as if these people are subordinates. We need to, now I might have a little biased opinion because my wife was my processor. Which is kind of weird, right? But at the end of the day, what I learned from my wife is that I had the empathy, and that's probably why she fell in love with me. It's because I had empathy with her. I knew how to treat my processors. But where I came from is that I understood kind of what she went through, because when we would go home, and this is when we were dating, she'd vent, right? And she even became a processor at different companies while I was a loan officer at different companies, and she would just consistently vent. And what I would learn from her is the things what not to do. And so I would then mold my approach and communication in a way of what she would want, and naturally I got more gravitation. I got more people working for me because she was giving me all the insight. And what's odd is that 99% of the process we work with are women. Get it? And what do women want? And no offense, I'm not being sexist or anything, but women just want some courtesy. They want to be treated like fucking real people.
Louis Vuitton purse.
Louis Vuitton purse. Yeah, I know that, bro. But right, so at the end of the day, if we understand these are the real facts, who the hell are we to come off to them like we're their employer? Or we're gonna talk to them like they're trash? Because women naturally, and this is a compliment to you, it's not disrespect, they're kind of used to getting approached and chased. Get it? But when they get treated like shit, and they get treated without disregard or given any credit, what do you think they're gonna do? For anyone who's in a relationship or married right now, what the hell do you think they're gonna do? They're gonna remember that shit. Well, my wife's got great memory, bro. She'll remember shit that I did wrong back in 2002. Like, remember that one day? Like, fuck, man, you'll never let me forget about that shit. But it's for real, though. And that's something that we really got to kind of take into our communication with anyone that we talk to, not just because they're women, not just because they're men, but at the end of the day, we understand that they're kind of our partnership, and without them doing their tasks, we can't complete our overall function, which is fund more loans. Get it?
Yeah.
Got it. Any questions on that?
They're your ally, not your enemy.
Exactly. And so why that comes into play is because our prospects are going to be hounding us for updates. They're going to get impatient. And it's not their problem, it's just that they're used to kind of getting updates, right? So when you think about the things that you buy on Amazon or things that you buy online in general, we are kind of wired to get updates. So like, hey, your product just got shipped from Tennessee, it's now in Texas, right? And we're kind of counting the days. Even though as minuscule as that sounds, this is kind of how we're wired. And so even though they didn't give us money or complete a transaction with us, they technically are completing a transaction with us because they give us their documents. And so if it goes 2 weeks without them hearing from us and they don't get that update of like, hey, your product just shipped from Tennessee and is now in Texas and en route, they kind of get alarmed, right? They don't understand what's going on. Now, how do we avoid that though? How do we avoid that anxiety? And one of the things that I hear Jay do very well on the phone is he sets up the expectation very properly. So after he goes through the disclosures, he'll say, hey, I've done my job so thoroughly that you're not going to hear from us for the next couple weeks. So for the next couple weeks, all we're doing right now is gathering the pieces that we need to put your loan together for approval, and that's working with title and escrow. So it's not uncommon if you don't hear from us for the next 10 to 15 days, because we're working on the back end. However, I'm always available if you have any questions, if you have any concerns, I'm always a call away. But right now, no news is good news. And I think I heard Ray V say that a few times. No news is good news, right? And why that's effective is because there will be a point where you're so busy with generating more business, you will forget to update that person. Our systems aren't compatible with updating them every single day, right? So it's really about setting up the expectation properly and not telling them that it's going to be done in 30 days. But for example, if I was setting up a deal right now, I would say, you know what, we look like we're going to be closing before Christmas, right? Because that's a 60-day turn time. Don't say, hey, we should be done before Thanksgiving, because that's 30 days from now. All you're doing is setting up the false impression, but we come at it through a biased opinion because we're like, hey, this is gonna be fast, it's gonna be super easy. Come with me, right? It's gonna be super quick. You're gonna love it. I'm gonna give you an update every single day. Now, we don't know that we're kind of digging our own grave that way, because now they don't know what to expect outside of what we told them. So when it becomes a little bit closer towards Thanksgiving, you'll be like, hey, D, you told me we'd be done by now. You'd be like, damn, I told you that, so you didn't pick Loan Depot. All right, what had happened was, but we have to be very kind of transparent, right? And say, hey, you know what? How we work is we work very fast and very smooth. I've done a lot of work up front. Nonetheless, we should be done before Christmas. I'm going to keep you updated, so please monitor your emails. If there's anything that's needed from you that demands attention, I will be on the phone to you, right? You're going to get a lot of emails, but more or less they're just updates. You're going to get emails for disclosures that are in the portal that looks like it's urgent, but don't fret. If there's anything that needs your immediate attention, I'm going to be on the phone with you. That's the way you set it up. And what you could do is buy yourself some time, because right now, if you have your file clean enough, at the time that you elevate it to the PAQ, it goes right to underwriting. You guys see that? Okay. So sometimes we'll have files that are approved through underwriting before it's even hit a processor. You guys getting that right now? Yeah. Which is key, right? That's huge. Which is now you're seeing the whole reason kind of one of the advantages of setting up the process in the way that it is. But nonetheless, our processors, the capacity is only at so much. And so we could have an appraisal, we could have an approval from underwriting before it hits processing. But we want that, as opposed to before, where it didn't even hit the processor for 10 to 14 days. Get it? So by the time the processor picks up the file, they understand kind of what they need, the meat and bones of it, in order to get that file clear to close. So soon I would give it another 30 days before we get to a point of processor assigned to clear to close within 7 days. Now we're operating very efficiently. But in the meantime, it's up to us on how we paint and convey the experience through our processors. So there will be times where we get a call from a borrower who's very impatient, like, hey D, when am I gonna close? I got this other lender calling me, they're offering a better rate and pricing than you are. What do you tell them? Well, what I tell them, because I'm going through the same exact thing, is saying, today is Wednesday, right? So like, hey Jim, I actually have a meeting with your team set for early next week, and then I should have an update with regards to your expected time to close. What that does is it buys me damn near a full week. Get it? So I don't say, the last thing, number one is I don't say, okay, let me go ahead and email your processor and see if I can get an update. Because what's gonna happen is 95 other things are gonna happen. I'm gonna completely forget about getting them that update. Get it? So I'm gonna push it out. But I'm also gonna paint the picture that I have a meeting with their team. And so I can kind of tweak it in a way where, hey, I got a meeting with your team set on Tuesday. And that meeting is gonna be talking about if there's anything that's needed for close. If there's anything needed, I'll reach out to you, but if not, don't worry about it. We've got everything. You see, because of our relationship with Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, VA, or FHA, whoever that the entity is that they're approved for, say because of our relationship, we need minimal items from you. This is one of the reasons why homeowners in Orange County prefer to work with us, is because we alleviate you from all the pressure and the back and forth, right? Can you imagine if I contacted you every day needing something brand new? It would suck, right? So because we're so efficient on our side, the only time we ever reach out to you is if we ever need anything. So the reason why this is important is because you need to set up the right expectation, otherwise they're gonna keep hounding you for updates. They're gonna get impatient and they're gonna think about leaving you for another lender. And this is one of the ways that you make them stick, is really just setting up the expectations properly up front. Got it? Any questions? It's pretty straightforward, right? Yep.
How long does underwriting usually take once they have a file in their queue?
Right now it's about 48 hours, so it's pretty fast.
Because I have somebody that actually yesterday asked me for an update, but then she got that email that the process is on step 4, which is underwriting.
Right.
So I didn't know how long it takes them to review her file.
Sure. So let's say that's a good point, right? So let's say they're at step 4, and your borrower calls back and says, hey, I got this email that we're in step 4 days ago. It was supposed to be in underwriting. What's happening? Say, oh yeah, good news. Everything's moving along just fine. As a matter of fact, I got a meeting with your closing department, with the closing department regarding your file on Tuesday. You see how I pushed it out? Let's say if it was Friday, I got a meeting with the closing department on your file on next Wednesday, right? But since, right now, no news is good news. So all they're doing is putting all the pieces together for the final approval to set up your closing. So by next Wednesday, I should be reaching out to you with the confirmed ETA of when to close, if not sooner. Keep an eye open for any emails from operations or myself, and I'll keep you updated. And usually they'll just take that, it's okay. Because the problem is though, the only reason why there's trouble created is if we got that same message and we said, you know what, let me email the underwriter, let me check with the processor and I'll get right back to you. And then you don't. That's what creates a problem. Get it? Say, yeah, we should be close to closing. I would imagine we close by Friday. And we're just shooting out dates because we think that's what they want to hear. But if we have enough, kind of empathy, again, is just really understanding that all they want to hear is the truth. They just want to kind of just understand what's going on and say, hey, I got a meeting with your closing department on Wednesday. Even if I don't, all that's doing is buying me some time, right? And then I'll set a reminder on my calendar of Wednesday at 12 and say, hey, I need to get an update to the Joneses file. And so let's just say Wednesday comes around, I have no update, no response. I'm gonna email operations or the processor that morning and be like, hey, I got a call set with the Joneses at 3 o'clock. Is there anything that I can get you while I'm on the phone with them? Using that same tactic that I talked about earlier, right? So if they reply back and says, no, we're all good, then at least I have some meat to talk to them about. Get it? But if the process says, yeah, it looks like we still need a WVOE and we need a recent bank statement. Okay, cool. Now I got some meat to talk about. So I call him back and I say, hey, you know what, Jim, just like I said, we had a meeting this morning on your file. And it looks like we're prepping everything to close. The only thing I need is a recent bank statement. Can you send that over to me right away? Make sense? If they said, no, we don't need anything, just waiting on a written VOE, got it. And then I'm still gonna give them an update to Jim. But hey, Jim, I just had a meeting with your team. Everything's all good. The next update I would expect is the beginning of next week or sooner. Keep an eye open on your emails or any calls from me. But right now, we're just prepping your loan file for closing. Make sense? Yeah. And that's how to kind of get them off your back. Any other questions? Yeah, good content so far? You guys picking up any good value? Kind of help you close a little more extra deals? You know, I do accept Venmo, so 15 basis points. yeah, EBT. No, but seriously though, the information or the content that I'm going to be sharing with you is not only shared on the channel, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook, but it's kind of applied to current time. And so a lot of these issues I know are issues because this is what we talk about in the sales managers meetings. We talk about certain areas of the KPIs where we can improve or where we're having kind of issues on. And it's not on you guys, more or less, it's on us, and that's why we have to identify where in the process there may be some leakage. And without you guys understanding the best practices of how to patch up these leaks, the only one who's really gonna suffer is your mentality, it's your mindset. Because you're gonna feel like, damn, this is not working, or damn, I wish this can go faster. And the only way to really solve that is to voice out your opinion and kind of, you know, bring out any questions that you guys have, okay? So with that said, I wanna open up the forum to any questions that you guys have. Yep.
Yeah, Dan, I appreciate it, man. I'm glad I attended. I picked up a value, a lot of things.
Thank you, man. I'm glad you came
use
too.
And that you use to kind of alleviate our stress level and anxiety.
Yeah.
So they're useful. I think when after you get out of this thing. Just my thoughts though is in terms of the expectations that I like what Jay says about the next couple of weeks. We're gonna put your file together. It's not uncommon that you're gonna not hear from me for 10 to 15 days. What's your thoughts if we work in congruence with the operation teams in terms of aligning our teamwork mentality and aligning with the KPIs, you know, the key performance index, best practice, and perhaps the process team members would at least give them a call to strengthen our alliance in terms of, you know, assuring them that, hey, it's not only the loan officer, it's part of our team mentality and our team unity to call them, and perhaps a suggestion of that.
Kind of get the processor to hear from, so they're hearing from more people than us.
Right, so there's continuity. It's like
Yep.
it's like a relay race, you know.
Yep.
It's like I got the baton, and I'm gonna put the baton to Luke, so he's gonna run too. So because we're running,
Yeah.
we're running on cylinders, you know, day in, day out. We're trying to deal with other, you know, parties and other variables in the sales force.
So let me make sure I understand your question correctly. So it's a matter of like, hey, is it possible that we open up the idea that processors get a little bit more involved and make a connection with our prospects so they feel that they're hearing from more people than us?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so great question. And because you're married and I know this, I'm actually gonna talk about it in something that you can relate with. Whenever it comes to a confrontational thing, my wife is never heard, right? Whether it's our neighbors or whether it's the person at the customer service, if it has anything to do with confrontation, she's never heard, right? She relies on me. I'm like, hey babe, why don't you go do this? Like, man, you go tell them to do that, right? And the reason why I say that is because I have a choice. Number one is I can ask my wife, hey babe, you just go tell them. You already just told me. Or number two is I could kind of take the bull by its horns and go handle it because it's either gonna get done regardless or not. And one thing that I can control is the way I'm gonna react off of it, because if I reacted off of it trying to change her from her habits, then I'm probably gonna be there for a long time. Rather than say, hey, you know what, I identified that this person doesn't like to communicate with prospects, or you don't like confrontation, I'm gonna go ahead and take the bull by its horns and handle this, because either way it's gotta be handled. Does that make sense? But I do get what you're saying, because there are certain times where I feel like the processor should be calling. But at the same time, I also have understanding that the processors are just so either inundated or they're timid because they don't want to get caught on a phone call with the borrower for 35, 45 minutes getting grilled because they're not salesmen like us. Get it? And I would actually prefer that they not get on the phone with my prospects if they feel timid or threatened by our borrower, because they actually risk chance of losing my deal, and that's my money. So what I would do personally is paint the picture as if I just talked to Paula, Leslie, right, Latoya, or another processor's name, you probably are thinking of it. Hey, I just got out of a meeting, even though I didn't. Hey, I just got out of a meeting with them, and all I'm talking about is an email that they sent to me saying, hey, I don't need anything from your borrower, because I hit them up the earlier part of the day and say, hey, I got to call back with Mr. Jones at 2 o'clock. Is there anything I could grab for you to move this file off your desk? Yep.
About suggestion, okay, sure. That's a good point. There's different personality types, you know, timid and some are very engaged. What if we just implement like a robo type of call? Hey, this is processor so-and-so.
Yeah.
I've been assigned to your file maybe 3 to 5 days afterwards.
Yep.
Please be assured that I'm your designated processor, and there's certain tasks, you know, blah, blah, blah. You know?
It's kind of like that in place already, but it's an email.
Email, yeah.
How about a voice activated?
Yeah.
A suggestion, like a voice, like this is Sue or this is Mary, whatever, you know?
Great input, and I'll definitely give that feedback.
Then just click, just one click. It
Sure.
doesn't have to be verbose. You know, you worked your assigned process. I'm your assigned processor. Blah blah blah.
Sure.
You spoke to your loan officer. It could be whatever, Ray or whatever, something general, because they're going to be repeating that 10 times or 20 times during the week.
Yep.
And just button, and that's it. At least instead of an email,
Yeah.
reinforce it with a voice. You know.
So for those of you on the phone, what Ray V was talking about was an idea of creating kind of like a slide dial, kind of like a Vargogo dial, but from the processor, saying, hey, my name is, much kind of a little bit more beyond the traditional email that they get. And I think that's a great idea. However, one thing that I do understand is that if in the event it was never put in place, right, I would probably take a couple steps back and understand, well, why would that be needed? And the reason why I would find, me personally, I'm just looking into my own process, right, is because I possibly set up the expectation in a way where I'd say, hey, you should hear from processing, right? You'll get a call from processing from the very beginning. It's something that I set up front at the very beginning. Because if it gets to a point where this person, in order to give me their commitment and give me their time, is that they need to physically hear from a processor, and I hear that from the lead, then at that time, I would email the processor on one-off, right? But on the flip side, I can set up the expectation and be like, hey, monitor your emails for any messages from myself or your processing team. If there's anything that's urgent, that's needed from you, that's delaying your process, you'll hear from me. Get it? I'm meeting with your processing team all the way through. I'm very involved. If there's anything that's needed from you, I will be on the phone with you. So that way at the forefront, they never expected to hear from the processor. But I do get what you're saying, because that little extra meat could be like, okay, well, at least they heard from someone else. But at the same time, I can control that perception by saying, hey, I just had a meeting with Leslie, your processor. This is what they need. Get it? And usually they don't fight back on that. They don't be like, well, I'd rather hear from Leslie. Because these people don't want to hear from more people than they need to anyway. That make sense?
I think it helps when they leave contact notes too.
Yeah, it definitely helps when they leave conlog notes. And that's something that the only way you could do is, number one, you got a choice. Number one is you could hit them up directly and say, hey, why didn't you leave a conlog note, right? Or number two, bring it up to their team lead and say, hey, the reason why I'm reaching out to you is because I don't see any conlog notes. Now I'm delegating the coaching to the team lead to say, hey, why the fuck didn't you leave any conlog notes, right? But now I even got more reason to reach out to them. The issue lies where we reach out to them, but there's info in the conlog notes. You're like, oh, damn. Right? Shit, I should have checked that. But yeah, good point. Good point to both of you. Yeah.
So, being part of the junior class that just recently got to the floor, I think I could speak for a lot of people where I myself would feel very timid saying, talking about someone's retirement or, and it's all a matter, like you said, putting into motion and getting to the desk and practicing it. By any chance, would we be able to maybe get like some examples of, or bits of phone calls where we could hear somebody putting in practice. That way we can duplicate it. Because as easy as it sounds to go on the phone, and what happens if they hit me with one of those rebuttals that I'm not prepared to, you know what I mean? So I feel more comfortable if, would that be a possibility?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to answer your question though, so anytime you're ever hit with a question that you're not comfortable with, then you have what's called kind of a scapegoat response. What I call is a default response. Like, great question, let me write that down, right? So how I'd respond to a question that has to do with retirement is saying, you know what, great question. I actually got a meeting with our underwriting department, right? Let's say, back that up. Let's say it's at the very beginning. And say, you know what, great question. Let me take a couple notes. When I prepare the information for you, I'll get the details for you on that. Make sense? So you're answering it, but you're not. And then what happens is when you get off the phone, then you meet with someone who's a little bit more experienced, because then you get to learn from the experience, right? The worst thing that you could do is probably freestyle and say, oh yeah, we could blah, 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 do this and that, and you're just spitting numbers out of your ass, right? That's probably the last thing you want to do. But understand that number one is that these people don't understand what you don't know, and they don't know how inexperienced you are. But I do know you're good at math, right? So one thing is for sure is that you can do quick basic math and say, you know, anything that has to do with retirement, even though you may not have a retirement built up or retirement's far from your imagination, the whole idea is understanding that you're in retirement, your income changes, it shifts. So it goes from hourly wage to fixed income, right? Our generation probably won't have that privilege. We won't have that pension, you know, we won't have that Social Security. That thing probably be long gone. There'll probably be something in place of, but it's something that we don't necessarily understand because that's not our language. But when it comes up to retirement, all you have to be concerned about is just understanding what they want. And so, hey, you know, D, I want to retire in 12 years. Got it. How many years do you have left on your mortgage? I think 28. Let me see how I can help you align that with the time that you retired. Right? I'm not telling him to say, okay, well, in your 401k plan, what's your contribution? What's your quarterly return last year on your 401k? Do you have 403b? I don't, right? It has nothing to do with me, right? All I'm trying to do is like the things that I can control is like their mortgage. How can we help you pay off your mortgage? Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yep. So have default responses, because there will be questions where you don't know the answer. Just have a default response. So you know what, great question. Let me make a quick note of that. When I have your disclosures ready, I'll actually have the answer for that. Very fast, very simple, and you're making a quick note on it. But you understand that's one of the concerns that they have. That's one of the buying reasons that they're going to decipher in order to make a decision to move forward with you. Get it? So that's actually a very, very good question. Any other questions? All right, so we're moving on an hour. I appreciate you guys' time. If you guys do have any questions, feel free to contact me. There's gonna be lunch for us that's gonna be waiting inside the kitchen. It's pizza again, so feel free. I ordered more pizza, so you guys are more than welcome to have more than a couple slices, okay? Hey, everybody, no worries. Everybody in the remote branches, I thank you guys very much for joining us. If you guys have any questions, feel free to hit me up, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.